Hello, everybody, and welcome to Voices of the Goddess, where we empower, inspire, and uplift women to be the goddesses that they are meant to be. I'm excited to be here with you today. My name is Allison Mancini. I am one of the co-hosts on Voices of the Goddess, and I am a holistic nutritionist and human resources director for an amazing company. My passion is about helping women to take care of themselves basically through food. I'm a big believer in food can be medicine, and it really can take care of our bodies best when we eat well. And so I'm just really passionate about making sure that women take the time to take care of themselves, get the right fuel into their bodies so that they can be their best goddess self. I am also married to a wonderful man, and I have 2 adult children I'm extremely proud of, 25 and 22. And I live in sunny, nice and cool South Florida today. It's cooler down here. We're loving the cool weather this week. But I'm originally from Michigan. I'm a Midwest girl, just like my co-host. So would you like to introduce yourself?
I would love to introduce myself. I'm Julietta, otherwise known as the Magical PT. I am, as Allison said, originally from the Midwest. I grew up in Wisconsin and moved to Florida in the early 90s. And I am a physical therapist, but in a very non-traditional sense. I started working for myself about 20 years ago just because I didn't fit in with the way traditional physical therapy is practiced. And I really look at the person and a body as a whole, mind, body, spirit, not just working on their muscles and bones, but really addressing the whole being, because true healing only happens when you look at the whole. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Well, would you like to introduce our sponsor?
Oh, see, you had me all confused by me going second today.
I know.
Um, well, no, you know why? Because we normally do our talk and then we do the sponsor before we bring on our guest.
Okay, fine. Then we'll do the talk. Okay. So, all right, listen, this is how we roll. We are perfectly imperfect. And if you do not think you can start a podcast, you are sorely mistaken. Anyone can do this. You just need to have have an amazing producer behind you. That's what you need. And we have one of those. So
That definitely helps.
okay, so let's talk about your practice, because I think what's interesting to me is when I first met you, do you realize we've known each other almost 7 years now?
That's crazy.
I know, it's kind of crazy. So when I first met you and found out you were a physical therapist, I was like, oh yeah, physical therapist for after you have surgery. Because in my head, you go to a physical therapist after you have surgery or whatever. And I have, had scoliosis when I was younger, and I've had knee surgeries, and I've had other surgeries. So I've gone through my fair share of physical therapy. But I remember when, I don't know, we were probably talking about my back because of the scoliosis. I tend to have back issues. And you're like, oh, you should come see me. And I'm like, but aren't you just for like after cert? Like, I had no clue. So anyways, fast forward 6+ years later, I was actually in Julietta's office last week because I, at the lovely age of 51, have a heel spur. So they are not fun. They really hurt.
Yes.
And you really depend on walking. When you cannot walk, it hurts to walk. It's a real challenge, right? And that's like one of my favorite self-care practices is getting outside and walking, right? And walking my dog. So I was really struggling, and I do a lot of different, I work with chiropractor and acupuncture and massage therapy and all that stuff. And you kept saying to me, Allison, you have this because you're out of balance. And I'm like, oh, I know. Like, I should know better. So I went into
what? Do you want to tell them what I specifically said to you?
Because I doubt I probably blocked it out because I was mad at myself. What did you say?
Because I said your butt's not working.
That's right. You did say that. You said my butt's not working right, which is interesting because I could feel it. Like I knew, because I do yoga and I was a ballerina when I was younger. So I could tell things weren't working right. But, you get busy with life and you just kind of pretend like those things aren't happening. And finally, I went into Julietta last week. and she got me all balanced and worked her magic. And I cannot tell you what's interesting. You remember what I said to you when I was laying on the table? I said, how long is this going to last for? And you're like, I don't know, until you do something to get yourself out of balance. Well, guess what?
What?
I'm back out of balance, so I'll be back in soon. So
I told you too, the fact that you have a bone spur, like we need to take the pressures off the body that created the pull, that created it in the first place.
Right.
Once that's gone, it doesn't mean the pain is instantly going to go away, because the body needs time to reabsorb that excess bone that grew there. And
what's interesting to me is that after I saw you the first couple days, it felt, oh my gosh, felt so much better. I'm like, oh, this is what it's like to not walk with pain anymore. I was so happy. But with the balancing, because I think I had been out of balance for so long, with balancing me, my lower back started to bother me. And I'm like, dang it. I'm like, I gotta go back to Julietta. So apparently my butt muscles still aren't working right, girl.
So, and it's, the longer you're out of balance, it's a little bit more complicated to get you back. But once you get there, you should just do what I love. I had, like, 2 weeks ago, I had 2 kids, like 2 boys under the age of 18, both self-initiating, going to their parent and saying, I need to go see Julietta because I know I'm off balance. And they came in here and I asked them, did you hurt yourself or something? Because they're both kids that play a lot of sports, and they've come to me when they've been injured. And both of them, I asked, did you hurt something? No, I just can feel that I'm off balance, and I want you to balance me so that I don't get hurt playing. And I was like, wow, these kids get it. I mean, thankfully, because their parents have been bringing them to me since they were really young. But how amazing would it be if everybody got that? Like, we talked about this. It's much better to do preventative medicine than to fix things after they're broken. And that would be my dream, if everybody would come to stay balanced before they're in pain, before they're hurt. And especially, we talk about self-care. For a lot of our audience, self-care is walking, yoga, Pilates. I'm forgetting things but if you're hurt and you can't do those things, you're taking away that thing that fills your soul, that fills your fuel tank. And so it's better to stay balanced so that you can keep doing those things that make you feel good, rather than waiting till you get hurt and then you have to take a break from it for a little while. And
that's not fun. No. That does not make my soul happy to not get outside and walk. So yes,
exactly. So, all right. Unless you have anything to add, now it's time for our sponsor.
Let's do it.
So happy to have our sponsor, Graciela Valdez Photography. She is an award-winning, published, and professionally certified portrait photographer who specializes in boudoir and personal branding. She creates custom and concierge portrait experiences that are transformative and life-affirming. Whether it's an intimate portrait honoring your highest self or a professional, engaging portrait for your business, she makes pictures of who you are, not just what you look like. And that is so true. And I know Allison is going to have a session with her, which you need to get that scheduled, but you're going to love it. Like, her pictures are amazing, and B, just the whole experience, the Graciela experience is fantastic. So I can't recommend her enough. And it's time to bring on our guests.
Yes, let's do it.
I'm super excited to bring Wendy on today. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Would you please introduce yourself to our audience? Tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. So in the short story, currently I teach at a local university, some really fun classes, but the life story in a nutshell, I grew up in Germany and Texas and Utah and California as a military brat. And so I was exposed to a lot of different cultures and lifestyles and things. And then in high school, I discovered the art of movement, i.e. dance, mostly social partner dancing. And discovered this whole new language. And then that sort of shaped my journey into anthropology, or the study of cultures, and then into fitness and wellness and health, and now here I am.
Yay. Well, so glad to have you. And speaking of anthropology and cultures, just to let our audience know, Wendy and I met because we went on the same trip to Egypt together. So that was quite
Speaking of anthropology and
cultural
culture, yeah.
experience.
So did you know each other before Egypt? You met on
We met at Egypt.
Met
Yeah.
in Egypt.
and how you met in Egypt, and how did you find out about the Egypt trip, Wendy?
A friend of a friend.
Okay. That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And here she is on our podcast now.
Yay.
Small world.
Small world. All right. Are you starting or am I starting?
I can start.
Oh.
So as you know, Wendy, we're going to ask you some questions. So we're going to start right in here.
I
The
heard
first one
rumor.
is, what one book do you wish every goddess would read?
And I'm going to cheat and do maybe 2 or 3, but very quickly. So the first book I think that was super life-changing was the Siddhartha book. And it was funny, as I had the book for a few years, but it wasn't until I was fully symptomatic with Lyme disease that I stopped long enough to actually read it, because I was so emotionally distraught that I didn't have enough energy to do anything else. So I said, okay, fine, I'll read.
Wow.
And sorry, had a moment
It's okay.
already. Let's see. But the Lyme disease forced me to have to be still, because otherwise I was out jogging and dancing and I would just go. I was like beyond full of life, but I was out of balance with the being still and being active.
Mhm.
And so having to be still with Lyme disease, I began to appreciate the art of stillness. And as I went through reading Siddhartha, and that, like, of all his journeys and all of his different professions and pathways and everything for him, the actual message was, be still. The answers are inside.
Mhm.
And so it really kind of changed my thinking, I guess, in a way that it's like, oh, it's not all about out there. It's more about in here. And then to quickly move into, from the next phase of the journey, was a book called Mastery: The Keys to Success and Long-Term Fulfillment. And I actually accidentally ran across that book while I was looking at our college bookstore, even though I was no longer in college. I just couldn't help myself. But I saw this book and it really caught my attention. Mastery is the story told from the practice of martial arts. And for me, I was relating it to the practice of, what you have to do for competitive dancing and performing, and that precision and things. And that the message there was that it's really about that everyday practice that creates the mastery. Even examples like Michael Jordan, every day he would still dribble and free, and shoot. And there's just those basic skills. That's what created the mastery, not all the tricks and the fancy things that we think of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
That's
good. Nice. And 2 books that are completely new to our show, because we find a lot of us like the same books. So sometimes we get the same books over and over. So
I know, I was thinking, what
new
books
books.
they've already heard of.
Well, I know a few people going through Lyme right now, and it's a real struggle, and I can understand where it does force you a bit to be still and to, I'm impressed that you took that time. Like, so many people would just be unable to handle that, they would be depressed. And I'm sure you were depressed. Don't get me like,
Yes,
I'm
I
sure it
was.
was, yeah, I'm sure you
Full
were.
moons were the worst.
I bet. Yeah. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that you took that time and you made the best of that situation that you could, and you got into reading and you got into that book. And I think that's a really good, lesson. It's one of the things, it's interesting to me. It makes me think of, for our young people, because like I said, I have a 25 and 22-year-old.
Mhm.
And my youngest, she's had COVID twice. And because she's at college, they have to quarantine. Like there's just no question. They make them quarantine. They can't go around anybody. And I'm like, read a book, pick up a book and read. Like, this is your time to like relax and rejuvenate and read. And you know what I mean? So I think it's really, it's an important lesson. I think sometimes things happen in our life that kind of force us to do things when we're going a little crazy. So
Yeah, and I really appreciate you tapping in on that point, because so often, and I think you all have noticed this, we're in epidemic proportions now of substance abuse.
yeah.
Right? Because somewhere we got this notion that, oh, this pill will make me feel better,
Yep.
or this food or this alcohol, whatever, it'll make me feel better, or at least make me forget.
Mm-hmm.
And really, when you're looking at something like Lyme's, everything you put in your body makes you feel worse.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
things like that weren't even an option on the table to maintain any sense of sanity.
Mm-hmm.
So part of it was, well, I was running. I was like you. I was active. I was dancing. I just discovered salsa, and it was like wonderful, and all these things. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, every time I would go jog, I would come back and feel like I'd been hit by a truck.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, fortunately, speaking of the music and dance, there are healing elements to the music
Yes.
of salsa, because of the Ghana drumming influence. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that became my healing dance.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
To get through that.
I first started, but like we're going off on a tangent here, and I'll finish up. I first started doing sound therapy in my yoga classes. One of my yoga instructors would use it, and I was like, that was incredible, like so incredible how good it felt.
Yeah.
And it sounds weird, but it really is quite interesting how much sound therapy and music does for you. So
Well, we are all vibration. So
exactly. Yeah.
when we resonate with healing
Yes.
vibrations, then it puts our body back into balance, into homeostasis, into all those fun
words.
Yeah.
Nice.
Exactly why my treatment table is a sound bed.
Yeah, I love her. I didn't even mention that.
Yeah, I need to come see her.
Yeah, I didn't even mention that. Like, that's one of my favorite parts about going to Julieta's office. I just want to lay on that darn bed because it like vibrates and has sound, and it's got crystals. And I'm like, I could just lay there for a half an hour and be like, good to go. I need one of those.
Yeah, there you go.
Awesome.
So I would say, even if I do a bad job, my table will heal you by itself.
There you go. There you go. All right. So speaking of all of these great things that we're talking about, our second question leads right into this. So what is your one favorite self-care practice, and how does it support you?
Simply put, moving meditation, which leaves it wide open. For me, it's always been about getting out in nature and just walking and letting the brain just kind of go through all the garbage it's going to go through. Well, he said, he said, she said, and then just have all those little conversations that I can't have or wouldn't have with the person, but let them just flow in my mind as I'm walking. And then I come back and I'm resolved, or at least less upset, or just like more in tune, more in balance, more back into like normal, whatever that is these days. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then of course the other benefits are anytime we're moving, whether it's dancing or yoga and all the things that you all were mentioning up front, the self-care practices of, Tai Chi, Qigong, they're all movement based. So it doesn't matter. Well, I mean, you pick the one that speaks to you and do that. And then, it's benefiting our lymphatic system, but it's also allowing us to literally move through the stuckness of the emotions that we're experiencing.
I think most people have made the connection, but it's emotion. So emotions are movement themselves. So
yes, and now I don't know how accurate it is, but some etymologies of the word talk about it coming from Latin, where it's energy plus motion, and I'm like, well, yeah,
that makes sense. But I love that you brought up about the walking and your mind. So that's one of the places when I'm out walking outside. I usually am walking the dog, but I am walking
yeah,
outside.
me too.
And that's one of the places where my mind, like, I work out all kinds of stuff. Like, some people do that in the shower. Some people do that when they're doing yoga or whatever. Mine is what I mean. That's where I come up with some of my
Your best ideas.
Yeah, my best ideas. That's where I come up with solutions for things. That's where, if I'm struggling, like you said, if I'm having an issue, he said, she said, or whatever's going on, that's my place where I can like work it all out in my brain and come to a better place with it. So thank you for saying that, because I thought I was the only one that did that. I thought I was the only crazy person walking down there. I'm sure if people drive by me when they're walking, because I'm sure my facial I'm very expressive with my face. It's probably all over the place.
I'm like, well, I can't believe you said that. And then, fortunately now everybody's having conversations with their ear pads in, or the AirPods. They don't know if you're actually talking to somebody or not.
So true.
Okay.
Talking to someone on the phone, and you can be talking to yourself. I also love that you brought up lymph, because
I do too. Yes.
It's one of the most underlooked at systems of our body and so vital to our health.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
It's starting to gain more and more recognition. And so we keep putting that out there. Lymph. Like, you got to take care of your lymph.
Yeah. And it's like, what I used to talk to my students about. I mean, this is a circulatory system. It's like your sewage system of your body. And and it doesn't have a pump like your heart to move it throughout your body. So if you're not moving, your sewage is stuck. And that's
I love how these conversations always come, like, they always are so connected. So my youngest, we have finally figured out some issues she has. We think she's got like a sluggish lymph system. It's just really not moving. And one of the massage therapists / physical therapists that Julietta and I both know, she and I were talking, and she was talking with my daughter, and she's like, you have to get up and walk around. Like, you have to get moving. Nothing else gets that moving but your movement. Like, because my daughter was a competitive dancer, but she doesn't like to exercise, right? So
that would be me.
Yeah. So she'll just so our friend
I can't dance, I'm not moving.
Right. And so our friend was like, just get up and just walk. Go for a walk. Go walk around your, just get everything moving. And I don't think people understand that. And you explained it so well. Our lymph, or Julietta did, our lymph system doesn't have a pump that keeps it. It's us moving that gets that moving. So
yeah, we're the pump.
Important. Yeah, it's very important.
When you talk about get pumped up, I mean, literally.
You must have had so much fun with Wendy. She seems like she's a blast.
Exactly why I'm happy to have her here on the show.
We had a delightful time. In fact, I had just shared with Julietta a picture of the two of us when we were in traditional Egyptian attire for one of the nights of what were we on, the cruise or something?
Yeah, the cruise.
We're like getting our Egyptian goddess on.
We'll post it in the Facebook group so people can check us out in our galabeas. Yes. All right, we got to get moving on these questions here. We're so distracted here. Yeah. So we all have these days where we just don't feel like showing up, but we know we gotta. So when you're having one of those days, what tool do you pull out of your back pocket to make everything happen?
Well, in a nutshell, for me, when I get to those points, it's usually because I'm in a state of overwhelm. And when I get to that, there's too many things on my plate, or there's just, there's too many tasks, and then I'm just stuck. I can't think about anything because all of these thoughts are trying to occupy my little space here all at the same time. And I get stuck. I mean, I'm like, I can't do anything. Okay. You know, I'm like a little 2-year-old. Man, I'm not doing anything. But I found, and I found for me the only way to really kind of snap myself out of that is like, okay, I can't do everything, but I can do one thing.
Mhm.
And whether it's as simple as, okay, I'm going to like make my bed, or I'm going to do the dishes, or usually it ends up being housework because that's the one thing I try to avoid. But
You and me both.
I say that out loud in front of people. Oops.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
But, you know, I mean, it's like simple tasks, or maybe like, oh, there's too many grades. Okay, so I'm going to start with one class and one assignment. And then for some reason, it's psychological or you know, I don't know all the science behind it, but by doing that one thing, it's like, oh, okay, I got something accomplished. Yay. All right. And then all of a sudden there's room to think and to get on to the next one thing.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's
a great tool, super useful,
Yeah,
and
it is.
one that I think our audience can very easily grab on and say, "Oh, I remember that. Let me find the one thing I can do."
Yeah, I agree. It's sometimes, and I think you're right. Sometimes we, as women, we have so much going on, and we one of the a mentor of mine does not like this word. We get overwhelmed, and it's hard for us to like. We get so in that space that we can't even focus. And I think that is excellent advice, just to point people back to just find one thing that you can do, because it's so true. Once you sit down and you do that one thing, you're like, oh, okay, and then you can just keep on, you know, working through. So
It's really is taking that first step, you know, because we weren't designed to be multitaskers. And the more we try to multitask, the more we become non-taskers.
true. Yeah, I love that. Okay. Our next question is, and I know this can be difficult to find one, but what life experience has formed who you are today?
I would have to say, and I'm going to start it with the silliest little story. So when I was in college, I was able to be part of a performing group, and we did American traditional dances for the purpose of taking those dances to European dance festivals, where we got to meet and interact with traditional dancers and performers from literally all over the world. And this was a few decades ago, but and so here we were in these little small, you know, more remote villages or smaller cities in Germany and France and Spain, and the way it was structured is that we had these you know, we had live musicians. Everybody had to bring a band of playing the traditional music, and then there was the dancers. And so after we'd do all our parades and performances, they would have like a social gathering for all the performers. And of course, now we've got people from Turkey, Ireland, Yugoslavia at the time, and, you know, South America, North America, like lots of languages you can imagine. And we didn't have really a way to communicate a lot of the times, or very minimally. But what we found was when our musicians started jamming together, like, hey, you know this song? Yeah, you know. Then all of a sudden the dancers are like, we know that tune. So we all start dancing. Within minutes, we had spilled out from the place where we were at onto the street. And now there's groups of us doing these, you know, different folk dances from all over the world on the street. And I can still vividly remember, to this day, there was like a guy from Yugoslavia and a guy from Turkey and a guy from Germany and a guy from Ireland, and, you know, couples, and a few other places. And we couldn't really, you know, talk the same language. Who knows what religions we all were, different politics, different religion, you know, all those different differences. But in that moment, We were all the best friends in the world, having the best time ever. And this music, this dancing went beyond language. And so whenever I would teach my dance classes after that, well, actually it did, it shaped my direction to then study more about culture and more about dance and more about how this communication process transcends language and politics and religion and all of those things. And it truly builds unity in the community. So when I had the opportunity to begin teaching dance classes at the university level, then I would always introduce it with the dance everyone loves to hate, which is that chicken dance, because that was the dance that was introduced to us that year on these tours as the international language of music and dance. So it was like the dance of the year. And it's like, you love to hate it because it's so dorky, but yet by the end of the song, you're just so busy like making fun of a bird or laughing or whatever, you forget all the junk you're carrying with you, all of the self-perceptions, all of the, are they watching me do that? All the things we do on the dance floor. And so I think that summer, that 5-week experience really truly has shaped everything I've done since. Because it's really about whether it's like introducing people to dance, introducing people in my marketing classes that I teach now at the university, or in actually the profile program that I designed based on social dances. It's all about finding ways to connect.
That's beautiful. Love that.
Yeah. And it was taking me back to, I was an exchange student in Venezuela in 1986. And, besides Americans there were exchange students from all around the globe. And, the exchange program that I was with, it was actually started by ambulance drivers from the First and Second World War. And their whole belief was that if people could realize, meet each other and become friends with each other, that could potentially eliminate war. Because you think that you're so different, but then you get together and you just realize, like, we're all the same.
We all want to laugh. We all want to love.
Absolutely. So beautiful that you found that through dance. So it's time for a final question, which is, if there's one thing that you would want our audience to remember from this interview, what would that be?
It's going to be a spin-off of the last question, which is, if we spent more time focusing on what's similar about others, we would see less of the differences.
Yeah.
I
know. It's like, yep. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. This was such a pleasure having you, Wendy.
Oh, thank you.
So
it was a joy to be here.
Awesome. So everyone watch out on our Circle of Goddesses group. We'll put that picture of Wendy and I in our galabeas in Egypt up there so you can all see it. And thank you again, Wendy, for being on the show with us. It was great having you and great seeing you again. And also want to thank our sponsor, Graciela Valdez Fine Art Photography. And thank you also to our listeners. And if you've liked what you've heard today, please like, follow, subscribe, share. What else do
all those
things. And also, if you need to get a hold of Wendy, Allison, or myself, all of our social media contact information, all of that, you can find it in the show notes or the comment section below. And I think this show's a wrap. I want to wish you all a very magical day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
The The journey toward our higher selves continues with conversations in the Indigo Tent. Join us on the adventure.
Hi, Zella.
Hi, Wendy. Welcome to the tent.
Thanks. What's been going on in your world?
Well, I have been thinking about play. And I know that you, as a former ballroom dancer, I would assume that you and all the social dancing that you did, I would assume that that was a form of play for you.
Absolutely was, especially the social dancing. It just,
Yeah.
no two dances or pieces of music were ever the same.
So then you're lost in the adventure of figuring out how to dance to this tune.
Well, yeah, and connecting the non-choreography, but it's like, what move would work with this flow, and what move would work with this partner, and yeah, it became a kind of play.
I like that. Well, listeners, the reason why we're going to talk about play today is because I heard an interesting story a few weeks ago on The Pulse, which is an hour-long program on NPR. I think the host is Macon Kelly, something like that. But anyway, one of the junior journalists was analyzing her own life and realizing that it sounded like she was in her late 20s, early 30s, that she did not play, that she worked and she shopped online and she watched TV, and she did nothing in the sense of how we view the word play. And so continuing to listen to this story, this young woman did some research about play and why it's important for human development. And she found a psychiatrist, probably a psychologist, right, Wendy? She found a psychologist who had done a lot of research about play. And in particular, he examined the life of one of our early mass shooters. So that's always a tragic event in our history.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but one of our first mass shootings was back in the 60s, which is hard to believe that that type of nonsense has been going on for a while. But I believe the man's name was Charles something. Back in 1966 at the University of Texas at Austin, he climbed up in one of the bell towers and then just randomly shot innocent people. So this psychologist was interested. Why did he do that? And apparently there was no warning. There was no red flags. This guy was quiet, reserved, kept to himself. And I think he was a maintenance man on the campus. So when the psychologist went back and looked into the man's childhood, he interviewing other people, he found out that this as a little boy, he was not allowed to play. His father thought that play was a waste of time. And so he either had to be reading a book, doing chores, or helping his father do something, but was never allowed to play. So any thoughts on that, Wendy?
Ooh, wow, that's a can of worms.
Yeah.
In a way. There's just a lot to process there. Because then it makes me think about the years in which we had so much child labor, right? And then did those kids ever get to play? And then it's like, what does that do, generation after generation, where you have children who are forced to either, to not play, or to have to work, or to not be kids, whatever that means. And then it's like, what does that do to them as adults?
Right. And how does that affect them in the brain development aspect?
Yes. And then how they interact in their adult lives, and all that pain and trauma gets trapped in their bodies, and then it gets released violently in this case. And so it's interesting because, I can't help think about, every species, at least all the ones I've come across, whether they're human or animal or whatever, have some form of play as children. And that
So
play
true.
is to,
I'm going to step back inside. We thought it would be fun to do the podcast, one of us outside playing, but I think it's breaking up a bit. So I'm going to go back inside.
well, it was fun playing out there while it lasted, right?
Yeah. So go ahead.
And yeah, and you had a gorgeous backyard to look at and enjoy, and scenes of nature. And and pretty good weather, I would think, huh?
Yes, it's beautiful here this week.
Yeah, this week or this moment, because in Texas, if you don't like the weather, wait a few minutes, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Well, except in the summer, then you got to wait a few months. But yeah, so this idea of play, I keep thinking, it's like every animal, it seems like they play with their animal siblings, or they do some form of play, because that helps them learn the skills or survival skills, if you will, that they might need as adults.
Yeah. And Wendy and I both have boys, men now, of course, but I don't know about yours. I would assume, Wendy, that yours were like mine. Yeah. My boys were constantly wrestling, and sometimes it was fun, and sometimes it was, just please stop. But at one point I began to realize, when I compared them to families that had girls, and the girls were always, politely playing, and my boys were rambunctiously playing, I realized the wrestling was a need to actually physically touch another human being, because they're, typically not going to be affectionate like girls are. I would see some of my friends' daughters, they would sit in the chair together and hold hands and have their dolls on their laps and read a book. And not my boys. No, of course not. They were wrestling on the floor like, wild animals.
And mine were, we did a lot of throwing of things. And
yes, throwing.
Hours and hours and hours of throwing balls back and forth. And I actually, during those years, developed a halfway decent football spiral pass.
Nice. I love it.
But it didn't go that many yards, but I could get it to spiral.
My dad would be proud of you. The football coach dad would be proud. So play. So Wendy and I both taught in public schools for a number of years. And for my career, I noticed the children that I first started out working with, they had such amazing developmental skills by the time they got to me. The first grade I taught was third grade in Burleson, Texas. And those kids were amazing. And then I moved up to fifth grade and taught in Mansfield, and those kids were amazing. And then the world changed. Video games really took over. Mm-hmm. And I noticed, and my colleagues noticed, and I'm sure you noticed, Wendy, that over the years, kids have become less and less academically ready. And we see more and more emotionally disturbed kids. And you have to wonder if it's not all these violent video games, and is that messing with their brain development, and more importantly, are they getting outside and playing that very important skill, imagination, that researchers have shown time and time again is vitally necessary for brain development. So if you're watching a video game, I would tell my students, it's like the birds feeding their little chicks. The mama bird goes and gets the worm, and she chews up the worm, and then she spits it as she swallows some of it and then she regurgitates it back up into her mouth, and now it's all digested, and then she feeds it to the baby birds. That's what you're doing when you're watching a video game. You're using somebody else's imagination, and so you're not getting the full benefit.
What an interesting visualization.
Yeah, and I use that on purpose because if you can
Yeah.
gross kids out, that you can get them engaged.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
And along with that, now I spent a lot of years in the university level too, and over the years teaching fitness activities, teaching social dance, where it was movement oriented classes.
Yep.
And I noticed from my perspective that earlier on, you do a dance, whatever, and they had more stamina and more, it seemed like more general body awareness or muscle awareness.
That's interesting.
And then, fast forward, here I am in my, I was at the time, I was in my 40s, and I was, like, hey, let's do this dance, this, we'd be doing our movement. And these kids couldn't keep up with me. And I'm twice their age. And I was like, wow, this is alarming.
Very. Yeah. So we're not only limiting ourselves emotionally, mentally, but also physically if we don't get out and play.
Right.
Now, one thing I've noticed about my dear friend Wendy is she takes a walk almost every day, and you have a bike, right? That's actually a powered bike. And I've noticed that after I talked to you, Wendy, that when if we have a conversation after you've taken a walk or ridden the bike, you're in a very playful mood. And
Yeah,
so
kind of euphoric.
I've noticed some people, they go on their walk because, I have to go on a walk because I have to get my heart rate up, rah, 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 and it's more regimented. And so how do you see exercise?
Well, I see it two different ways. One is there's the discipline of it, the thing you got to do because you got to do it, because you got to feel better, because you got to be fit, because you got to da 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 da. But then, and then it's almost like the shaming side of being fit, right?
Mm-hmm.
If
That's
you're
what
not
I'm getting
running
at.
5 miles,
Yeah.
well, you're not really exercising. Or
Right.
if you're not, working out in the gym, then you're not really being fit. And it was like, wait a minute, something's wrong with this picture. And I noticed even just this morning, like I was starting to feel a little bit of mental clutter going on. End of semester, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, grades.
And I realized, well, and then I went on a walk, and I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to clear my head. I put on a little moving meditation music and just looked around at like all the different animals and birds, and just let my mind wander where it wanted to wander. I wasn't worried about the pace, how, or how far I was going, or how long I was going, or how fast I was going. And it was just like, yeah, it was cooler weather here too. That helps. And it just sort of invigorates me. And then I was like, yeah, life is good. Look at all the good
Right.
stuff. And for me, it's this time also when I can just think about all the things that I truly am grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
Just as simple as I actually can go out for a walk.
Mm-hmm.
I actually physically and emotionally and it's like I'm in a safe place.
Mm-hmm.
So I can walk. I'm physically capable of walking, and just like that whole piece, and just allowing my brain to think about all the good things that have happened just completely turned my day around.
So you were able to clear out mental or emotional clutter.
Yeah, or redirected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
So I think that's an important part of play too, is that it just allows us to practice being different.
Uh-huh. And I wonder, going back to what made this whole conversation happen, this young woman admitting that she doesn't play. I wonder how many adults don't play, but they think they do. For instance, my mother's favorite sport is shopping. Now, I hate shopping. I mean, I do it, and my mother loves clothes shopping. My mother could go shopping. In fact, she used to. When she had a car, when she was allowed to have the keys to the car, she went and shopped every day of her life. And I think back on you hear stories from your parents of what they did as children. My mother and her mother,
You
my
mean,
grandmother.
not the story about walking 3 miles to school every day and back.
Yeah, not those stories. So my mother and grandmother would go horseback riding once a week. My
Hmm.
mother never took me to do that. Obviously, my grandmother knew that this was a way to connect with her daughter. It was a way to play. It was a way to get out in nature. It was a way to interact with an animal. She knew that it would be good for the development of her daughter. Somewhere along the line, my mother, you know, changed. Let's just say there was lots of events in her life that caused her to become bitter and difficult to deal with. And but shopping is not play, in my opinion. Maybe it is to some people, but it's personally, I think that sounds materialistic
Oh,
and shallow.
well, we could
So
call it hunting for the
hunting,
deal.
maybe that's it. Maybe I just have a jaded perspective. So for my husband and I, we go for a hike once a week. And to us, that's play because we're exploring different parks in this new part of town that we've moved into, and the new part of the Metroplex rather. So, and most of the parks here in Arlington have some type of a nature trail. So for us, it's an adventure, and that brings in the play aspect.
Right. It is an adventure, and it occurs to me we have different, not you and I, but I mean, like, in society, there's a variety of opinions or preconceptions or misconceptions about what play is, right?
Mhm,
Because we think of,
exactly.
stop playing, or that idea that you know idle hands are the devil's workshop, or it's like, if you're not busy every moment of the day, then you're gonna fall into sin and
Yeah,
temptation,
right.
whatever
And you will
that
be
is.
a worthless human being.
Yes, and so we've kind of equated play with being idle,
Mhm.
or
Or frivolous.
frivolous, or
Mhm.
uh, not serious, or whatever the right words are. But it's like there's that negative connotation that play means you're not being productive.
And then, okay, let's break this down. Is that almost a male female thing? Because what
I
comes to
think
mind is
it's
men playing
cultural.
golf. Okay, this is grown men that go out and chase a ball with a stick. But I golfed with my father, and I can tell you it's exceedingly fun. It truly is. So have men found a way
Especially with
to,
the ball.
justify it and saying they're cutting business deals? But my father, when he retired, he played golf every day. There was no business deals to be had. It was the pure enjoyment of play and interacting with other people, which, there's the imagination side, playing all by yourself, but there's also the interaction side of play, team sports, and all of those things.
Hmm. Yeah, so we really want to, like, I don't know, rethink perhaps what our own definition of play is,
Hmm.
because is play doing something, and I'm just asking here, is play equated with doing something organized like a team sport, or is play connecting with others on a activity? You think of, like, in traditional societies, the kids would play with their bows and arrows and
Hmm.
practice being grown-ups, I guess, or um, they would play different hopscotch games, or games that gave them better coordination skills, or games that would challenge their mind.
Mm-hmm.
in thinking. So, like,
Well, remember when you would come to my school and teach dance during various units, and you would show the dances that the adults did, but you've also talked about the play that the children did
Mhm.
through dance.
Yes, and you know, a lot of our earlier dances were about daily life, right?
Hmm.
So the dances encoded our culture. Are you kidding me?
It's okay.
That would be my son calling, of course.
And you never have your phone on,
Never.
I know. Oh, well, we can laugh and play at, and we can laugh at ourselves. This isn't play right now, but laughing at yourself.
It's like, it's yes, technology interrupts, supports. They're right. So it's like, yes. So dancing was I think I was saying dancing was part of encoding our culture from
Yes, that's
generation
what
to generation and helping us practice the skills that we would need or may need later on, or teaching us a skill. Like there's so many dances about like there's one that comes to mind in the Polynesian culture where um, there's a bark of a tree and they peel off the bark of the tree and they pound it down for I don't know, days at a time, and go through a whole process to turn that bark into almost like a cloth, and then they patch those cloths together and make a huge um, um, well, all kinds of different things with it, but and then they'll draw different pictures on it and stuff, and it's a skill that is hardly done anymore. But there used, you know, there was a whole song with hand movements and everything about that process. And so that was a way of, you know, it was play, but yet it was also reminding us of a skill.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
when
like
we
that.
don't, yeah, so when we don't do that, how do we learn to be adults? Well, how do we, and this was, sorry, I'm going to go off on a roll here, but this
Go for
was
it.
something always I found frustrating, uh, not frustrating, but challenging with students. Is like, oh no, you know, I don't do that. Or I can't dance, or I got two left feet, or I got this, or I got that. Oh, I want to, no, I don't want to learn that. You know, I don't want to dance because, you know, I'm not good. And I'm like, well, how are you ever going to get good unless you actually practice, which means play, right? So if
Yes.
we look at you know, if we look at learning a skill as playing, then how much different is that skill going to be for us?
Indeed.
Hmm.
I think that's one of the many reasons why I like yoga. I feel like when I roll out my mat and I start moving, even if it's teaching, I have this sense of play. It's an adventure. What are we going to do? How am I going to get everybody from point A to point B, where we come into shavasana and we're totally relaxed and we're feeling alive, like the line from Dr. Frankenstein, he's alive, or it's alive. But you after you've done some movement, your muscles literally feel alive and your brain feels less cluttered, or you have been able to compartmentalize your thoughts and tuck them away neatly and get on with your day. The other thing that's fascinating to me, and I can recall this, it's such a sweet memory. My grandson, who's now 13, Jacob, when he was a little boy, the imagination that he had was off the charts. And I knew this as a teacher. When I would observe him play, when I would play with him, the 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 role playing he did with his stuffed animals, going outside and digging in the dirt, and he had a construction site on the side of their house. He took me over to the side one time and he showed me this incredible landscape that was in his brain. There was
Wow.
nothing there. It was dirt and rocks and some grass. It was the side of the house that we neglect, right? But he had a complete construction site going, in his mind, and he described in great details all the things that were going on in this area. And I can tell you now for a fact, and it's not because I'm his grandmother, he is off the charts smart. So what does that tell you? Imagination develops the brain. It just does. And our children need to play. They
It's
need to
how
get
we learn.
outside and dig in the dirt. Oh, and one comparison I have is earlier when Wendy and I were talking about doing this podcast, I said, well, golf is play. And Wendy said, really? I don't think so. And I said, well, okay, look at it like this, Wendy. It's grown men, yeah, going outside, chasing a ball with a stick. But if a grown man went outside and sat in a sandbox every day and played for an hour, we would think he was a weirdo. So our play evolves as we mature, as it should, right?
Yeah, it changes because the imagination process changes.
Exactly.
And yeah, there is some level of I guess it's like it's a different type of play, because with like golf, right? There's a lot of analyzation of, okay, where do I want the ball to go? How far do I need to hit it? What angle, direction, da 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 da. So there's like a lot going on in the brain, and then you're
Right.
outside getting there. Woo!
Exactly. Yeah, you're visualizing the shot. Well, that's imagination.
Yes, it is. And that's another whole thing of like imagination, is that just that thing that little kids do, because they're still figuring out what's real, what's not real in their own minds. And that's part of their development. And is that supposed to stop? Do we then, or when we get older, do we call it creativity? What? And why do we, what is reality and what is imagination anyway?
Mm-hmm.
But only our perspective.
Exactly. So moments with our higher self. What's on the agenda for our listeners?
Well, today's moment with your higher self is about figuring out what is your play. What does play can or need to look like for you?
Or do you even play?
Or can you turn something that is mundane into play?
Mm-hmm.
Can you allow yourself to play?
Mm-hmm. Good questions. Cooking can be play because it's if you're trying something new, and it could be an adventure. Now, when it's the drudgery of cooking, that's not play.
No, yes, it's the everyday. Oh, what do I do now? Yeah, versus I enjoy cooking like themed or holiday meals, because it's like a production. It's it's gearing up for that performance.
Yeah.
And hopefully it all turns out well.
And then speaking of holiday, we want to encourage you listeners to take time to play and to not let the holiday, the upcoming Christmas holiday or Hanukkah or whatever you celebrate, to not let that revolve solely around the food and the meal.
And the stress.
Yeah. So get outside and play. Take
Yeah.
some time to play.
Actually, think, it's like the greatest gift you can give to yourself and to your loved ones is time.
Mm-hmm.
Quality time with them.
With
the presents don't last, or
Right.
Presents are presents, but
Right.
being the present or being present yourself
Being present, yes,
is
playing
the greatest gift.
is the gift, yes. And playing a board game, developing that relationship. That's another thing that I knew as a young educator. The research was out that kids who ended up in, or adults who end up in prison, when they go back and they look at their childhood, they didn't play games. They didn't play board games, especially. They didn't learn to follow the rules. They didn't learn the courtesy of giving another person the space to take the time to play their turn. So play games with your children. It's really important. Candyland. Does it get any better? Is that what it was called? With the ladders or Chutes and Ladders? There was that too.
It's always a fun one.
Yeah. Our favorite game right now is Farkle. 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 That's a fun game. It's a dice game. Makes you think, but you have fun with it.
Awesome. Yes. So give the best gift this holiday season and take time to play. After, of course, you define what play means for you.
Yes. And be present in that present to your family or your loved ones or your friends. Be present in their lives.
Right. It's like put a price tag on your gifts. Let's say, like growing up, we did silly gifts a lot with my siblings. It's like we all like chocolate. So, we'd get a giant Toblerone bar and send to my older brother, or he'd get like some coconut carvings. I mean, it was just like funny, silly stuff. So it's like change the price tag on your gifts so that you can play more.
There you go. I like it.
Yes. So play is important.
We hope you've enjoyed this podcast and our musings about play. We especially hope it's caused you to define play and look for areas in your life where you play or where you need to add some playtime. Add some playtime. Just like your mother used to schedule playtime or play date with somebody. Schedule that for yourselves.
Yeah. Or just don't schedule and be random about it.
There you go. That's true. Yeah. Love it. All right, listeners, thank you. And leave a comment. Let us know. What is your play? What does it look like?
Yes, please share with us. All right. Have a great day.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to us, and always find ways to connect with your higher self.
Absolutely.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. We hope you've been uplifted by this episode. Please help us uplift others by sharing, subscribing, and reviewing our show. Join in on the conversation by adding your insights and transformations in the comments section. See you next time.
The journey toward our higher selves continues with conversations in the Indigo Tent. Join us on the adventure.
Hi, Zella. Welcome back to the tent and Happy New Year.
Hi, Wendy. I'm so glad that 2020 is over.
Indeed, because now we can look back because hindsight is 2020.
Love it. Love it.
And so hopefully we can, I remember last year about this time, Oprah was doing her 2020 vision. And I think about, all the ideas we had from that seminar or event of thinking, we're going to get this clear vision in 2020. And then it went a whole different direction. But looking back now, it did help clear our vision and think about what's really important and what's not so important and what can we live without. And do we, it was just, it was a transformative year.
Absolutely. And for me personally, it had challenging moments, but it wasn't a devastating year. I did lose money because I did have renters that took advantage of the situation, shall we say, and chose to not pay rent when they were gainfully employed. But they are gone. They are out of my life. and I have better renters. So
We have blessed them all for onward.
exactly. But other than that, I think that the thing that I'll look back on and think about is that time of lockdown was a great time of self-reflection for me. It was very isolating, as it was for all of us.
Yeah.
I went through some tumultuous relationship events that rocked my world, but I was able to cut out all of the clutter that typically makes a situation like that even more difficult. I was able to, well, it didn't exist. There was nowhere to go. There was nothing to do. And so I was forced to do a lot of self-reflection, tune into my higher self, figure out what went wrong, what areas I needed to grow, and move on. So that it was good for me in that stand from that viewpoint.
Yes, indeed. It really challenged us to look at our emotions from a different perspective, from a broader perspective, perhaps. I know for me, similar events, right? Kinds of things that any other year might have really rocked our world. But because we were forced to be more reflective, or I shouldn't say we were forced to be, we were forced to kind of stay home a little bit more.
Hunker
And
down.
so, yeah, so we got to have some time, we have the opportunity to be a little bit more reflective in our thinking and process some of those emotions that have been just lingering.
And I think that's the key word right there, process. That time allowed for more reflection, but also more analyzing, more processing, and more growing. I
Yeah.
hope that, and I hope that's true for you listeners. I hope that there was something that you can take away from it besides learning how to bake bread.
Oh yeah, I remember one time over the summer, I was trying to find some yeast and it was nowhere to be found in any of the grocery stores.
Exactly.
I was like, wow, what is our comfort food? Bread.
Heck yeah. Uh,
It was
well,
pretty
so
interesting.
2021, we have some exciting things to share with you in 2021. We've got a lot of great ideas for new podcasts. Same direction as always, tying back to the 5 elements of harmony, and especially being grounded in wisdom. That's more important, I think, than ever. And Wendy has been on her winter break from in between semesters. I've been on a break from teaching yoga. We've had some time with family and friends, and I went skiing, which is always great to get on the mountains and explore nature. So, but more than that, we're excited about a very upcoming event this weekend, as a matter of fact, January 16th.
Yes, we are. Because and just to give a little background on that, yeah, while we were on our breaks, both you and I individually and collectively were doing some reflecting about the end of the year and the beginning of this year, and kind of thinking like, what is it we want to accomplish, or let go of, or those kinds of things. And so it turned into get like, this is really some, over the years we've all collected different ways to transition between one year to the next, and have acquired some really powerful tools, I think, or processes to be able to make a more meaningful transition from year to year and not just exist, to take the new year on with intention, with purpose, and not just, oh, it's another year, here we go. And for that reason, we wanted to share that some of those processes with you all. And so we created a quick little webinar, seminar, whatever you want to call it, to be able to walk us all through those processes. And so that's what we're looking forward to sharing with you. Now, hey, you may be listening to this in July, and that's okay too. We can always still keep processing our year and deciding intentionally to live the rest of the year with more purpose.
And maybe that's even a better way to look at it, is that we have all these good intentions in January, and then they fizzle out at some point. But if we
By
come
February.
back to it in July or August, and check in and see how we're doing with those goals, with those revisions of our lives. I think
I like that. Not just a vision, but a revision.
Yeah, a
And
revamp.
not just a solution, but a resolution.
I love it. Yeah. Well, over the Christmas holidays, I completed my course and got my certificate. So I'm now
Yay.
500-hour certified, and I am able to teach workshops now. And so we're going to have our vision quest, our resolution vision for 2021 is a little bit of Dr. Wendy's wisdoms, and a little bit of yoga and meditation, and even some dance moves from our dance instructor, just to think about where we're going and how we want to get there.
Yay. Yes, I'm excited to share this because it's benefited me so much over the years as we've built this and honed this and developed this into what it is now. So we hope you'll join us for this little workshop, January 16th, noon. That's Eastern time. So if you're in Central time, it would be 11 in the morning. Pacific, it would be 9 in the morning. And so we really look forward to being able to share this with you. And let's give you a quick description of what we'll cover in it.
Good idea.
So here we're just best to help, basically, instead of resolutions, we're going to go deeper into what a resolution is and what it isn't. And then we'll go through a process to help each of us develop a customized theme. And this theme then moves you towards a more congruent life. The idea here is that we're not just writing another set of lists to check off or not, but as we develop our thinking for like a year-long theme, now we can check and balance all of our activities toward that theme and say, yes, am I congruent with the theme I'm trying to develop for myself this year? And just as an example, I think as we were going through our version of this, Zella and I, we created a theme for Indigo Tent this year, which is fitness for your soul, right? Not just fitness for your body, not just mind games like Sudoku, but fitness for your soul. And this is our theme for the year. So we hope you'll join us. Zella, tell us what else will be, what they need.
Definitely come with comfortable clothing. And if you have a yoga mat, that's great. If not, don't worry about it. You don't need one. Bring your favorite journal, your new journal, an old journal, and your favorite pens and pencils, and maybe colored pencils and markers. We will give you some time to journal, to self-reflect, and to connect with your mind, your thoughts, your words, especially your words. Words have so much power. And then I'll lead you in some simple yoga asanas. Yoga, the word yoga means union. So union with yourself, with your soul, with your mind, with your body. But asanas means poses. So I'll take you through some activities, some poses that will help you to line up your spine, think a little clearer, and move with a little more ease in your own body and hopefully through life.
Amen. Yes, we have a book for you to download. We have a guided meditation, and then, of course, our journey through this process to help us have a more customized theme, our personal theme for the year.
Mm-hmm. And I love that in our course description that we've shared on Facebook, we also want you to bring a curious mind. What do you need out of 2021? And we're here to help you take that to a different level, not not a vision board. Nothing wrong with vision boards, nothing wrong with intentions and resolutions, but how can you bring those things that if you look back over your New Year's resolutions? I have all of mine in one book. And every year I break it down into themes, into categories. I have physical, I have relationships, I have spiritual, I have financial. And pretty much, and I'm not kidding when I say this, whatever I've written down has come to pass in my life. I have created vision boards in the past, and they've been exceedingly effective because it's fun to get creative and cut up a magazine and paste pictures all over the place, or draw, create, color. Those things are all fun. They definitely hit one of our 5 elements of harmony, being creative. But in our resolution vision for 2021, we want to take it a little bit deeper. We want to introduce the other elements of harmony, not just creativity, but wisdom. What have you learned from your past that can help you in your future? Inspiration. What do you need spiritually? Even if you're not a very religious person, put that aside. Spiritually, what do you need out of life? And then empowerment, expression. Who are you? What guides you? What gets you through the day? What's going to get you through the year? And how can you express yourself in an intelligent, thoughtful, and aware manner? And that's what we want to share with you. It's worked for us, and we want to share it with you.
Yes, especially this theme for managing our life really supports when life takes you off course.
Which it will.
And it does. I mean, that's part of life. Is maybe it's a different course. And that's why, for me, the theme concept is really important, because it does support us when we're having one of those, off course type moments. And we can just go back and say, yes, I'm on this. Got it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what we'll bring you is hopefully some new ways of looking at your vision board, maybe that you've already created, or your list of New Year's intentions that you've already written down. How can you customize it? How can you bring it into focus? How can you develop a theme? So that's what we're going to bring you. Our wisdom as teachers, our ability to help you categorize, narrow it down, focus, and then implement it.
Exactly. So we extend the invitation for you to join us live January 16 at noon Eastern time. We'll be on Facebook Live, we'll be on Zoom. But if you're finding this after that, we'll still have the information, and you can be able to see the recording. So where do you find it? Go to indigotent.life, and you'll look for the resolution vision information. Also on Facebook, search us at Indigo Tent, and you'll find the event details. And we'll, of course, we'll have it on Zoom, live, Facebook Live, and recorded, so you can go back and see it afterwards.
And watch it again and again if you need to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're looking forward to seeing you there and having an awesome vision for 2021.
Absolutely. All the best from Wendy and I. We love you, dear listeners. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We hope you've been uplifted by this episode. Please help us uplift others by sharing, subscribing, and reviewing our show. Join in on the conversation by adding your insights and transformations in the comments section. See you next time.
Welcome to the Health Channel, all health, all the time. I'm Kathy Buccio, coming to you from the Baptist Health South Florida studios. Now, from being healthy to kicking bad habits, here on the Health Channel, we are always trying to give you the tools you need to make positive changes in your life. But sometimes, no matter how hard you try, it doesn't work out and might even leave you more stressed and more frustrated. I'm currently not stressed or frustrated, and I'll tell you why. A scientific approach to making changes in your life. We're going to hear about that with our guest today. Her name is Dr. Wendy Guess, a behavioral change marketing educator with the College of Business at Florida International University. Welcome to the show, Wendy.
Thank you. Glad
Now,
to be here.
we need to tell our viewers why I'm so zenfully playing this instrument that this is divine, I have to tell you.
It is. The first
Why
time
am I
I heard
playing
it, it was
this?
just like, zah. It's called a Monolina sound therapy instrument from the company Fieldtone.
And this is going to be a huge part of what we discussed today, because it's a tool that actually helps in the stress management and finding that balance and that harmony that we're going to be talking about, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to do this, but I have to
Keep
put it
playing.
aside now before my stage manager kills me. Okay, so let's get into this story. Tell me a little bit about your background and what it is that you do, and especially dealing with harmony and wellness.
So currently I teach marketing at FIU. And before that, I was involved with a lot of health and wellness, fitness. And that journey started or continued really because I had found myself being all, so active and doing everything I thought was living a wonderful life. And then I found myself with an autoimmune condition, which sort of decided to reprogram how I was going to express life.
Right.
And so as a result, I found I really need to learn more about stress management and understanding the emotional aspect, the physical aspect, the mental aspect. And so here I am.
So then what does healthy living mean to you now as you went through that change?
Well, yeah. So originally it was like, well, you eat good and you're exercising. I mean, that's it, right? Well, I quickly found out that no, that wasn't it.
Right.
And so for me, it's become this journey of understanding that there's multiple components to living healthy. It's not just one or the other,
Right.
or two or more. It's really, for me, it's like a group of 5 things that I try to focus on every day to make sure that I'm getting that well-rounded well-being.
Absolutely. We're going to get more into that in a second. Now, I want to talk about a term you use to put these changes and balance into perspective, and that is harmony. So can you talk more about what you mean when we talk about, or when you say harmony?
Sure. Well, in the harmony aspect, when you think about music, you don't just play normally one instrument in an orchestra. You have multiple instruments, and they each have a part in the big picture. So when you've got all the notes playing, you hope that they're all playing their right notes, and then all of those individual pieces come together and make this beautiful symphony
Right.
or production. Same in dance. So, you've got multiple different dancers doing multiple steps
That creates a harmony.
that create this amazing harmony. And on the flip side, when you're not in harmony, or when you've gone out of harmony, it's like somebody's playing out of note and you're kind of going, ow, ow, this hurts. Or, you know, dancers off here when the rest of them are over here. It's like, so something's off.
And I think you bring up the analogy of dance because I know that you love to dance as well. So this also, it's part of your own harmony, correct?
Absolutely. And that's kind of where it all came from, as I was teaching dance for years and years. And so as a result of teaching these dances and trying to describe the style, the styles kind of took on this sort of persona of their own. And that's where I kind of realized what dance is all about.
Right, absolutely. Now, you hear so many times, Dr. Guest, that you're trying to find that work-life balance, or is there such thing as balance? I don't think there is, but somehow it goes beyond that, right?
Yes, yes. Because to me, you know, especially like talking about dance, you look at the balance of yourself. You know, it's like 1 foot, 2 foot, maybe hand on the floor. You've got 1 or 2 points of balance that hold you steady. Now you add a partner into that mix, and you're not only working with your balance, sorry about the mic, you're also working with their balance.
Right.
And now you're having to have multiple things going on to make sure both of you are in balance and executing the steps. So it really became quickly aware to me that there's more things going on than just balance.
But then what are the challenges that come? There's something that obviously disrupts this balance. What are some of those challenges that disrupts the balance?
So I like to use this analogy, you know, especially so many of us that are in a service-oriented position, right? Whether you're a parent or in healthcare or whatever the area is that you're in, you're giving and giving and giving, and you're giving and giving some more, and then eventually you're empty. It's kind of like the cup, you know, and your cup is empty. So now what are you giving when you're giving?
There's nothing to give.
But you're still giving.
Right.
So now we're giving emptiness. And so the idea, or the idea of pouring from an empty cup kind of really visualized for me as like, oh, maybe I should kind of work on refilling that cup.
That is a very good visual. So then how do you refill that empty cup?
And that's where we want to talk about different, finding those activities that maybe you're lacking in. So let's say, you're constantly giving. Well, when do you give back to yourself? And how do you give back to yourself? And what should that look like?
Right. You know what I like that you just said? You are responsible for giving back to yourself.
Yes.
It can't be reliant on somebody else. You have to find that balance yourself.
Exactly, and there's especially young mothers, which
I know
believe
those.
you have a few kids, or 2 kids maybe. Yeah. So there's years when you're a young mother and the kids are just really demanding a lot of your time and energy. What do you do?
Right.
Because they need that. You need to be there for them. And over the years I've met so many young mothers who are just like, I'm so empty, and I was like, okay, even if it's just 15 minutes in the bathtub soaking with salt. I mean, you need that time to replenish you.
Absolutely. And I'm very big on that, actually. I lock those doors and stay in the bath and pretend I'm deaf. And it works.
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things that we have to talk about when we talk about that balance, though, is stress. Mm-hmm. And that's one no one can escape. So how does that interfere with finding that balance? How does it hurt our harmony?
Well, right. So when you're in that setting of stress, you've got something that we want to differentiate between the kinds of stress. So there's acute stress, which, okay, some tragedy or some huge event happens, good or bad, and that's a one-time stress. Okay, then you deal with it, it's done. But what we're facing today is really more of everyday stress, the chronic stress that you're living with it day in, day out. Back to the analogy of young mothers, those kids are just there. And even though they're a wonderful joy, sometimes they pull us off balance, or they pull us out of harmony. And that's where, we need to recognize that. Now, over the years, I've thankfully been able to recognize when I have reached a certain level of stress, my body now gives me symptoms.
Right.
That's the one good thing of having an autoimmune disorder, is it kind of just says, hey, it's time now.
It's time to shut it down and rest.
And, so I notice my triggers, and then it's like, oops, okay, I'm there. Because if I let it go too long, then I go into toxicity, and and then it's just toxicity is spewing out of your
Yes.
mouth. You're not fun to be around. So it's about recognizing where your patterns of stress are, so that you can make that check mark to go, okay, now I need to make sure that I'm doing something to fill that cup back up.
Absolutely. I speak your language, Dr. Guest, because I think that's important to listen to your body, you have this one body who is telling you, this is what I need. Don't use that empty cup anymore. We need to refill it. We need to replenish ourselves. And I think that's really important. And as Dr. Guest mentioned, some stress is normal, but chronic stress is not normal. In fact, chronic stress can not only disrupt a balance in your life, it can be a threat to your health as well. Let's take a look.
Stress means that you're alive. It affects all of us. You can't escape it. It's not a bad thing. The challenge of modern life is that acute stress response sometimes gets locked in and it becomes chronic.
There's now increasing evidence to show that chronic stress can lead to chronic depression. So empowering patients with these different strategies is really paramount in terms of looking at preventative medicine for those individuals in the future and really improving their overall medical health outcomes.
I guess the take-home message is knowledge is power. Know about these systems, know how they evolved, what they evolved for. And experiencing stress acutely is beneficial because you're facing a threat in the moment. And so you want your evolutionary biology to take control and to be there for you when you need it acutely.
Our day-to-day lives have become very stressful. There are increasing work demands. Technology has blurred our work-life balance ratio, and we're all multitasking. So I think we all need to be empowered with understanding that this takes a toll on us emotionally and physically.
Now, when we think about stress and we think about finding harmony, how does that fit into the harmony profile that you've created?
So the harmony profile, that was basically an outcome of years of watching people figure out this dance thing. And so I created some questions that kind of helps us understand where we show up in maybe a stressful event or a group setting, and how we tend to respond as they relate to some of the personifications of social dances.
So we're going to get more into these harmony profiles. I even did my test online. You're watching the Health Channel. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Health Channel, all health, all the time. I'm Kathy Buccio, and joining us is Dr. Wendy Guest, a behavior change marketing educator with the College of Business at Florida International University. Now, this hour, we are talking about a scientific approach to finding balance in your life and making positive changes. And another word for that balance, Dr. Guest, is harmony. And we have here the Circle of Harmony. So can you tell us more about the Circle of Harmony?
Yes, so the Circle of Harmony are the kind of the 5 dances, if you will, that I put together for this profile assessment. And so we'll just kind of quickly go over each of the ones. So for me, Foxtrot represents wisdom, and not the wisdom as in we're so smart and old, but the wisdom is more like taking time to really reflect on our life's experiences so that we learn the lesson from them.
Right.
And also thinking about, just the whole mind and body connection, right? If we're not breathing, if our posture's poor, then our brain is kind of cloudy and foggy, and we're not thinking as clearly as we'd like to. And then we look at the empower. Empower is like the salsa. And so it's really about empowering your own expression of health, or your own health and well-being.
Right.
Taking that motivation, you're that person that really motivates the crowd to get on the same page, get on the boat, get going. So you're also very goal-oriented. And then you are thinking about your own physical well-being. In the expression, I equate that to the tango, because the tango is that kind of person that navigates around the dance floor, in and around not only your partner, but the other dancers on the floor. And you're also that person that really knows how to negotiate from a verbal perspective. And so from there, I look at that a lot as how are we expressing ourselves? Are we expressing ourselves from our own place of authenticity, or are we just, trying to just say something that pleases
Right.
others? That type of thing. Then we look at creativity. Creativity to me is the idea, is what's missing in most profiles, if you will, the personality profiles. They don't talk about that sense of creativity. Because who am I as a creative being? Well, it's not about the talent or the skills. It's really about how am I making life unique to me. So they're the idea person, constantly thinking of innovations, ideas. If you think about the dance itself, it was created the swing dance, yes, was created at the same time as jazz music. So the musicians were creating stuff, the dancers were creating stuff, and it was just this constant, hey, what about this? What about that? So it was trying those new things. And then we move over to the waltz or the inspiration, which is, you might think of the soul. Am I really filling up my soul and inspiring myself? Now, for some people, that's walking out in nature. For some people, that's listening or reading to things that really just give you that sense of joy and inspiration.
And this relates to those harmony profiles that we were mentioning before our break. And you actually have an animation to give us an overview. So let's watch.
Is your business and life performing in 5-part harmony? Let's think about choreography. Like an orchestra, you'll find multiple rhythms synchronizing together to create inspiring harmony. We have multiple roles in various systems that also need to synchronize. Our roles may overlap, and we find ourselves feeling like we're spinning out of control. Now we're in chaos or transformation. Maybe our business even needs a culture change. Recognizing the need to rebuild harmony helps you navigate throughout your systems or roles with more efficiency. How do we start to choreograph the rebuilding of harmony? I've spent decades performing, teaching, and choreographing social dance. It became like an experimental lab for studying the elements of interaction. I discovered each dance I taught took on a unique persona that made it come alive. The reactions I observed offered profound insights into the systems they represented. Out of this experimental lab came the Harmony Profile Assessment. The Harmony Profile helps you discover your dominant harmony that feels more comfortable and your disharmony that may need more support and attention. The Harmony Profiles reflect the personifications of the wisdom of the foxtrot, the empowered salsa, the expressive tango, creative swing, and the inspiring waltz. Which one will you connect with? Find out how you dance through life and business. Take the Harmony Profile Assessment now at drwendyguest.com.
So what I want to know, Dr. Guest, is how did you create these profiles?
From years of watching the dances and watching and trying to explain and describe the styling of dances, and as I was reflecting on the wisdom piece of it and the creativity piece and bringing them all together and realizing that when we're off balance or we're out of sync in one area, that we really need to boost some activities to build us up so that we are feeling more well-rounded.
Okay, so let's get a look at the profiles again. And first we see here the Foxtrot of Wisdom. Yes. Okay, so I want to bring up my profile because I did it and you're here, so I want to take advantage of that. Right. I got the Foxtrot and I got Swing.
Yes, so swing for you was the dominant profile. So when you're, when you're in that group or around or in stressful situations or change or things like that, then we tend to express what's comfortable for us. So in your case, the swing, you'd be the idea person, but also, what do we got to do? How do we got to fix this? Here's an idea, here's an idea. So you're always trying something. You're innovating, you're avant-garde, which is an awesome thing to be.
Well, thank you, Wendy.
Yes.
Okay, and then you said that's the dominant. So then now here pops in the Foxtrot.
Yes, so then in the Foxtrot, the idea there is as a disharmony, where that may be where you're feeling depleted, or maybe you've spent too much time in or something. So we want to find some activities that help rebalance the harmony. Not that anyone is good or bad or dominant or non-dominant, but that knowing where you're out of sync, perhaps, in a stressful situation is like, okay, so because I know I need to bring in some of the foxtrot activities, I'm going to focus on those for maybe this week.
Right.
And so for you, it might be things like just taking time to breathe and taking time to find that really excellent posture about and lengthening the spine. So if we
as we do this.
Yeah, how do we sit up nice and tall? And just taking time to just breathe.
I think this is really on point. I thought I would be a little more of the salsa, but I guess the swing matches, and definitely I need to do more breathing and more yoga. As a young mother, right? Okay, then it seems that when you do the harmony profiles with someone, they're usually given two profiles, a dominant and a not dominant?
Yes.
Okay.
So you want to know where this is like your comfort zone. This is where you hang out when you're in those awkward moments or out of your comfort zone.
Right.
And then the disharmony is the one where you might want to spend some time adding some support.
Okay.
And that can change based on the situation you're in. But in general, this says this is where you're out of harmony right now. So you want to bring in those activities to support that. And ideally, we're always working on all 5 areas to keep them in harmony.
In harmony, in balance. So then how can someone apply their harmony profile to improving their quality of life?
When you get your profile, for example, yours, the swing, and then the foxtrot.
Right.
So knowing that when you're, let's say, if I'm in a really stressful situation, I'm going to pay more attention to the foxtrot type activities.
Okay.
So like taking time to breathe, working on the posture, taking time to maybe even journal, reflect. There's physical activities, emotional activities, mental activities that go along with each one of those. Also finding foods that are going to support more brain function. So we know that things like the nuts and berries and leafy greens are going to really help support the functions of the brain. So if you know you're going to be spending a lot of time, like the end of the semester when I'm grading, I'm trying to add a lot more of that into my diet to support the brain function.
Okay. Now you brought one of these activities, and if you're just tuning in, I played this in the beginning of the show, and I've never been more relaxed in my life, Dr. Gass.
Yes.
So talk to me a little bit about this instrument.
So this is when I went to a workshop. I heard this for the first time a few years ago, and it was kind of like,
right, it was your aha moment.
I found the instrument I can actually play.
Okay.
And so it's based on sound therapy on the monochord, which is, in fifths. And the overtone in the strings, I'll just start playing. The overtone in the strings creates this reverberation that helps us balance and center and ground. So literally you are connecting all the different vibrations in your body and harmonizing them.
Right.
So now you're working in sync like you should be.
And this promotes that harmony and that balance just by the sounds?
The sound, the vibration, yes, because we're all operating and, we are vibratory beings. And so when we're in stress, we've got all these different vibrations going on that create kind of like a static energy or that sound of the chalkboard. And so that's going on in our body. So what this does, in my thinking, is it kind of helps connect all those different vibrations into one again.
Oh, feels marvelous. I can just do the whole show with my eyes closed. So what profile would this be for?
All of them.
If my husband is watching, we need to buy one of these for the house. I will be like this.
So all of them. They really support any time you're off.
Right.
It just supports. And so for me, I've even had some digestion moments, and I was like out of in the middle of the night going, I am not going to ER yet.
Yes.
So I thought, okay, I'm going to try this, and it just like dissolved it away.
Really, to re-energizes. I love that. Keep playing. Now, still not sure what harmony profile fits you best. We'll talk about how you can get your harmony profile. Plus, we'll talk more about how you can implement better habits into your life when we come back, if we come back, because we're going to fall asleep. Now you're watching the Health Channel, all health, all the time on South Florida PBS. Welcome back to the Health Channel, all health, all the time. I'm Kathy Buccio, and joining us is Dr. Wendy Guess, a behavior change marketing educator with the College of Business at Florida International University. Now, if you have a question, please call in using the toll-free number 855-796-4475. We'd love to hear from you. Now, some of our viewers might be wondering, well, what profile am I? And you actually have a website for that, Dr. Guess. So
Yes, I do.
let's take a look at it and how it works. So tell me a little bit about the website. What are we going to be answering on the website?
So on the website, of course, it's just drwendyguess.com. There's that little video explainer about the profile and then the link to take the quiz. And it's just asking you a quick series of 9 questions.
9 questions, okay.
That's kind of looking at how you're reacting to different situations. And after those 9 questions, it'll give you your dominant and then your disharmony.
And that's what the results will tell you. Okay. And who benefits from taking the quiz?
So when you're feeling stressed or you're feeling like something's missing, I think I'm doing all the right things, well, the Harmony Profile will help you kind of identify an area that may need some support that's not in your normal radar of things. So particularly like in the creativity, the wisdom,
Right.
The inspiration. It helps you kind of refine what activities to focus on to really build up and reharmonize yourself.
And as we mentioned, you teach at Florida International University.
Yes.
And what I'd like to know is, how do you implement the Harmony Profile in your classes? Do you?
I do,
Okay.
absolutely, yes. And so in my health and fitness marketing class, students come in, and to help them understand about the process of changing behaviors, I have them start with this Harmony Profile. And what that does is help them figure out, well, where they're already comfortable, but then also where they're not so comfortable, perhaps, or that disharmony. And then from there, they go in and they can narrow down some activities that they want to focus on to make a behavior change. And then we spend the rest of the semester helping them go through that healthy change process. Or
How do you
behavior change.
grade?
It's a
Who
wonderful.
is more balanced or who's most balanced?
It's more about the reflective process that they
Okay.
put into it. It's not, there's not a right or wrong activity. It's more like, are you putting in the effort?
Are you doing the work?
Are you doing the work?
Okay. Now, how do the Harmony Profiles help when it comes to implementing those new habits into your life? So if someone says, my case needs more breathing, maybe a little more yoga, how do you work in doing that?
So that's the main point, is a lot of times we're just thinking, oh, I've got to do something. I don't know what to do. Well, okay, maybe I'll exercise more. Well, for me, this is what helps, and my own life personally, is when I know I'm off balance, and I go, okay, where am I off balance? All right, if I'm off balance in, say, foxtrot, okay, so now I know the kinds of activities and food and thought processes I want to focus on
Right.
to bring that back into harmony.
Okay. Now, as we get into healthy habits, there are a number of different patterns in our lives, and understanding them can help us make better changes. And I want you to walk us through these, Dr. Guess, because habits, and anyone who thinks that habits can't be broken, they actually can. It takes work, correct?
Yes.
But
Yes.
we can change our habits.
And that's where we get into understanding some of the systemic aspect of what's a habit, what's a pattern, and then, of course, the system. So a lot of times we think, well, a habit is just this thing that I do, and I don't know why I do it, but I just do it, right? But when you understand the deeper meaning,
Right.
so like the habit really is just kind of our symptomatic expression of a pattern. It's what results from something else. And so when you understand that a habit is just like a symptom,
Right.
then you can look into understanding more about what's the pattern, okay? The pattern that's creating that habit or feeding that habit, supporting that habit. And that's really the underlying cause or reaction to, you could say, stories that we've created to ourselves.
So what you're saying is that behind every habit, there's a pattern that feeds that habit.
Yes. Yes. And so when we get closer to understanding the pattern that's feeding that habit, then we don't need the habit as much.
Right.
Right? Because it's just like you address the cause, you don't have the symptoms anymore from
Okay.
from medically speaking. And then from there, when we talk, when we understand kind of like what pattern is it that's that's asking for attention. You know, is it like, for example, eating? That's a common one we'd like to talk about when you're, you know, when you've got something, some emotional trigger, or like, you know, bad day at work or boyfriend breakup or whatever it is, and you go home and then you think, oh, what am I going to do? Okay, I'm going to go eat this ice cream.
Right.
And not just one bite, but I'm going to have the whole thing. You know, the whole quart. So then you look at, okay, what's that deeper pattern that's creating that emotional reaction to the bad day? And do you have choices? And yes, we do.
Yes.
So then we look at the systems, and those are kind of those unresolved attitudes or judgments or biases that tell us what are we really thinking? What are those systems doing for us and to us? You know, who are we loyal to? Who are we
Right.
not loyal to? All of those kinds of things. And that feeds the pattern, which then feeds the habit.
Now we're going to talk more about this, but I do want to take a moment to remind our viewers that you can call in if you have a question. That number is 855-796-4475. We're standing by and love to hear from you. Now, what is the difference between starting a habit and getting rid of a habit?
If only we asked that question before we started the
Right?
habit.
We wouldn't have this
You know?
issue.
And of course, we learn habits from our environment.
Right.
Right. We see on TV, like, you know, eating that ice cream is going to solve that, you know, that bad moment or breakup, but it doesn't really.
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't. So really, it's about understanding the pattern and the symptom or the system that's causing that desire to react. You know, if I want to change that, I want to go back and figure out what pattern am I in, so then I can have choices about how I want to express that
Right.
pattern, or how I want to even acknowledge that story. So we were talking during the break, you know, I'm named Wendy after Peter Pan, so I love stories, and we can tell stories that are accurate or inaccurate.
Right.
You know, for like Peter's thought all adults are bad pirates, you know, it's no fun to grow up, so we're not going to grow up.
Right.
Right? But when he can, you know, kind of like in, sorry, the analogy, the movie Hook, where he can realize that you can have both, now that need to be the pirate is reduced. You can
Right.
just be you, however that looks like.
However that looks like, absolutely. Now let's go ahead and look at some steps for forming healthy habits. And the first one is recognizing the habit for what it is. And now, what do you mean by that?
So that goes again to recognizing that pattern. You know, like usually some event triggers that reaction. And when you can recognize the trigger, that, okay, I get in this situation and I tend to react this way, right? Okay, when you recognize the trigger of the habit before it happens, now it's like you can stop the stress before you react.
So it really is a lot of listening and paying attention to the way that you react to certain situations.
Yes. Yes, there's some schools of thought that say, you know, be the observer of you and your body in your story, as opposed to being, you know, the actor or
Right.
being like in the middle of it. Observe what's going on. Observe how your patterns. How do you
Right.
react in these situations? And now, when you know, you're recognizing the pattern, recognizing the system. Sorry, I keep saying symptom,
Right.
system that it's coming from. You know, am I needing recognition? Am I needing acceptance? Am I needing loyalty? So how can I go about doing that differently?
I want to use a specific example. If you can give me
Sure.
one, Dr. Guest, so, and then we can apply exactly what we just saw. So how we can recognize that and change the habit and become aware and make those changes. So let's say, use an example.
Well, so of course I'm gonna go to the parent one. You know, our kids figure out our buttons really fast, and they
Right.
love to push them. And so it's, you know, and then of course we go into this reaction mode, and my kids love to tease me and get me going down these roads of stories that I'm really believing but not believing,
Right.
but know that I shouldn't be believing because I know that they're really teasing, but
And then you almost,
and then I go, you know, like I get caught up in that whole scene, but stepping back, you know, taking that breath, if you will, of recognizing, oh, they're just doing that trigger thing. They're doing that button thing. Ah, okay, now I can.
as opposed to
now-
reacting to
and
it.
reacting, now I can play along with them. And instead of thinking that they're really being serious when they're not.
Right. They just want to push mom's buttons, right?
Right, exactly.
So we reveal the 5 stages of change when we come back. You're watching the Health Channel, all health, all the time on South Florida PBS. Welcome back to the Health Channel, all health, all the time. I'm Kathy Buccio, and joining is Dr. Wendy Guess, a behavior change marketing educator with the College of Business at Florida International University. If you have a question for our expert, you still have time to call in. That number is 855-796-4475. Now, we're wrapping up this hour on managing harmony in your life and the steps to make those positive changes. So we've all been there trying something new, something healthy, only to realize we're in over our heads. Now we take a step back. So what are some of those setbacks when you start and you get discouraged and you got to start again?
Yes. Well, so there's
You're not alone, by the way.
That's right.
We're not alone.
We have a whole science, if you will, called behavioral science or behavior change. And so there's a variety of models. The one that I like to use is called the stages of change or trans-theoretical model. And with that model, it's helping us understand that there's multiple phases of change. You don't just decide one day normally. That normal people don't just decide, okay, I'm changing this habit, I'm done, here we go.
Okay.
But there's a whole series of steps, 5 actually, that they've identified.
So let's start with the first one, which is pre-contemplation.
Right.
Okay.
So that pre-contemplation, the first stage, is really, it's like you may not even realize, you may be in either complete denial or you don't know that you need to change, or
Okay.
you're just not willing to go there yet, right? So at that point, that's where you need like some extra supportive messages or information to kind of help you get to that point of realizing that you now need to be maybe contemplating it, which gets us into the second step.
So wait, if you're in denial though, Dr. Gass, does that make it harder to acknowledge and find that harmony though?
Absolutely, right, because you think everything's fine, and you're either you don't want to quit the habit or you don't want to change to another habit. And so that's where it's really difficult to acknowledge that maybe something needs to be
Right.
changed.
Okay, and now, as you said, now we're moving on to the second stage, which is now contemplation.
Contemplation, and that's where you might be kind of like either, I think it's a good idea, don't know if I'm ready yet, might think about, I'm going to keep reading about it and decide how to get more supportive information, how to get myself off that fence.
Okay.
And really, so it's like these first 2 steps particularly are very internal, attitudinal, if you will, that we need to go through that mental process before we're ever ready to make a physical
And you have to
change.
want to make that change, which brings me
Right.
to my third, which you say is the most critical of all the steps.
it is.
Which is, this one is preparation.
Yes, preparation is that step where, okay, now that you've gone through the first 2, you realize, yes, I am going to make this change. And instead of just jumping into whatever you think that new habit or behavior is supposed to look like, let's step back and take some time to really prepare. Not just prepare, okay, so let's say I want to start a walking program. Well, where do I walk? When do I walk? What kind of gear, clothing, shoes do I need to walk?
That's preparation?
That's all preparation. It's that planning stage.
Right.
Right? So then who do I need to walk with? Who's now, and this is where for me it's like the really essential part of preparation is who am I going to call on for support when I'm ready to just cave in or stop? You know, who's my support system that's going to help
To give you that motivational push that you need.
motivational accountability, you know, that's either going to walk with me or going to call me once a week to say, hey, how's the walking going?
Right.
Right? And that's the part that we really want to build in, is that sense of accountability. Right? So then now we're officially ready to start.
So that
Okay.
means that now that you've gotten your walking gear and you know where you're going to walk, now it's time to take action, which is our
Yes.
step 4 or stage
So,
4.
yes, so stage 4, we're ready to put those walking shoes on and start walking. We know our route, we know our path. We're ready to take that action.
Right.
And that's now where we go into from the mental and preparation piece, we're now going into the physical action piece of changing that habit. And, you know, that stage can last 6 months to a year. We might fall back a few times. We might, you know, get back into preparation again.
You can always restart this.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And, you know, because that changing that habit, it does take time. It
Right.
takes longer than 21 days.
Absolutely, it
Because
does.
that's just kind of a mental process.
But here you say that preparation, which I agree with you, it is a really important step. It's really critical. But I think the last step is really important too, which is maintenance, which means sticking to your plan of action, correct?
Yes. So generally, the rule of thumb is once you've been in action stage for about 6 months consistently, then you're now considered to be in maintenance, where you're not as likely to fall back into a non-action, right? You're pretty consistent. It's kind of like, I remember the years of where we actually had to wear seatbelts.
Right.
Because I grew up in an era where it was sort of secondary.
Optional.
Optional, if I want to
Right.
die, I would die, whatever. But when you had to, it was like I really had to spend some time consciously thinking about, okay, I get in the car, I put on my seatbelt. Now I'm in maintenance mode. I don't have to think about that. It's like I get in the car, I put on my seatbelt.
Now you created the good habit of putting on your
Yeah,
seatbelt.
so it's not like it's not a decision every
Right.
time we get in the car.
Right.
And hopefully, things like brushing your teeth. It's just something that you do. It's
Well, I
not a
hope so.
decision. Yeah, it's like you don't have to make that decision. Let's see, do I want to brush my teeth this time
Right.
or not?
We're now in a place of maintenance where you just brush your teeth.
So it's like it's just in there. Yeah.
Okay, but do you use this, Dr. Gass? Do you use this all the time still?
I constantly have to, we are human beings. We are constantly in change and stress. And so I use these to kind of help me stay centered, grounded, harmonized, focused. Yeah.
Amazing.
I'm
Now-
probably my biggest client.
Absolutely. You're like, not only a teacher, I tried it myself as well. Okay, so for a few examples of healthy habits, let's look at this clip for healthy habits to form before you turn 30. These are great tips, right? These are great tips to add in finding that balance and finding that harmony. And I think these can also help when you find out your harmony profile, when you go online, how you can implement these for a better quality of life, really.
It really is. And it's about supporting each one of the harmonies so that none of them ever have to end up feeling depleted.
Absolutely.
Because-
Are there any additional habits that you recommend for someone to find that harmony or some that weren't mentioned?
Yeah, so in each each one, it's about trying different things. So for me, especially for the swing, it's about trying new things. So like just a few years ago, I learned about this instrument. A few years before that, I learned about kayaking. I'd been canoeing, but I hadn't been kayaking. So there's just a variety of different ways that you can experience new things.
Right.
For me, nature has always been a place where I go to kind of refill my cup.
Right.
And find that inspiration. And now I just make a point to every morning I wake up and I look for inspirational information.
Right.
And
So
that-
would you say that's the common denominator with all the profiles, is trying new things to sort of enhance that balance?
Yes, and finding out a variety of things that work for you.
Absolutely, and that's the most important. As we wrap up, any last minute tips before you go that you want to share with our viewers, especially about your harmony profiles and finding that balance in an everyday stressful life?
stress happens. And it's not the stress. I mean, because stress is just stress. It's just an event. It's our reaction to that stressful event that makes all the difference. So I would encourage you to really stop and think, okay, it's stress. It's just stress. How do I want to react to that? Or do I want to take control of how I act instead of react?
Absolutely true. Thank you so much, Dr. Gus. And it wouldn't also help that we can all get an instrument like that, start our day off.
Yeah.
Or maybe take it in the car as we drive around South Florida. That'll help.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being here. Fascinating show. That's all the time that we have this hour. So be sure to join us next time on the Health Channel. All Health all the time on South Florida PBS. And follow us on social media at All Health TV, #AllHealthTV. And please be sure to visit our website, allhealthtv.com, where you can watch a live stream of the Health Channel and watch videos from previous episodes. I'm Kathy Buccio. We'll see you next time.